The first thing Admiral Kim Hana noticed was the smell. Even through the filtered air of Lunar Station, the stench of burned metal and alien chemicals leaked through the ventilation systems as the massive cargo ships began their descent toward Earth's orbital salvage platforms. "They're early," Captain Lee Taemin said, checking his chronometer as he joined Hana at the observation deck's main viewport. The two officers watched in silence as 12 enormous vessels, each the size of a city block, maneuvered toward the designated dumping zones with mechanical precision. Hana pressed her palm against the reinforced glass, feeling the vibrations. As the first ship opened its cargo bay doors, "Look at the size of those things, Taemin. The Galactic Trade Consortium must be desperate to get rid of this stuff if they're sending their heavy haulers all the way to Earth." The ships themselves told a story of galactic politics that made Hana's stomach turn. These weren't pristine diplomatic vessels or sleek military craft. These were workhorses, scarred and dented from countless journeys across hostile space, their hulls patched with mismatched metals from a dozen different worlds. The galaxy's major powers used ships like these for one thing: hauling garbage to places where nobody important would complain about the mess. "Another load of their garbage," Taemin muttered, his voice carrying the bitterness that had been building in the human military for months. "The Galactic Trade Consortium really thinks we're nothing more than their personal waste disposal service." The first cargo bay emptied with a thunderous crash that shook the station. Chunks of crystalline technology the size of cars tumbled through the void, bouncing off each other in a deadly ballet of discarded alien engineering. Hana recognized some of the debris from intelligence briefings, Vex energy matrices that had once powered their city ships, now cracked and darkened, like dead stars. "Remember when they first approached us?" Hana asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ambassador Zekthara with his fancy robes and that condescending smile. A mutually beneficial arrangement, he called it. Earth's struggling colonies desperately needed raw materials, and the consortium had excess inventory they were willing to trade. Taemin snorted. Excess inventory. That's what they called it. They never mentioned their excess inventory was broken junk that cost them more to dispose of properly than it was worth. The second ship began its dump, and this time the debris was even more varied. Bio-neural interfaces from the Krath Empire, their organic components still twitching with residual life, crashed into piles of Thorian ceramic armor plating that had been discarded for being structurally compromised. Mixed in with the alien refuse were pieces of human technology, manufacturing equipment, mining tools, even entire shuttle engines that Earth had sold to various species over the past decade. "Look at that." Hana pointed to a particularly large piece of debris. "That's one of our Mark 7 fusion reactors. We sold that to the Thorians 3 years ago for their mining operations on Kepler 442b. And now they're giving it back to us as part of their garbage," Taemin said. "Probably told their people it was primitive human technology not worth keeping." The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Humanity had fought for decades to earn even the smallest measure of respect from the galactic community. They'd shared their technology freely, hoping to prove their worth as partners rather than the young species that needed constant supervision. Instead, the major powers had taken what they wanted and discarded the rest the moment something better came along. "Sir," came a voice from behind them. Engineer Park Jinwoo approached with a data pad clutched in his hands, his face pale from hours of analyzing the incoming manifest data. "The numbers are worse than we thought. 10,000 tons of mixed technological debris. And that's just the first wave. They're planning to send 6 more shipments over the next month." Hana took the data pad and scrolled through the manifest. The list read like a catalogue of galactic military history. Weapons systems from conflicts humanity had never heard of, propulsion technology that had been outdated for centuries, and defensive systems that various species had deemed incompatible with current doctrine. Most of it appears to be components that each species considers incompatible with their own systems, Jinwoo continued. The Vex won't touch anything that uses bio-neural interfaces. The Krath refuse to work with crystalline matrices. The Thorians consider anything smaller than a battleship to be inferior engineering. Hana looked up from the pad, her mind already working through possibilities. "Of course they do. What the galaxy's great powers don't understand is that incompatible doesn't mean useless. It just means they lack imagination. Below them, the third cargo ship was finishing its dump. The debris field stretched for kilometers. In every direction, a constellation of discarded dreams and abandoned projects. To the aliens, it was worthless refuse. To Hannah, it was starting to look like an opportunity. The communication panel chimed, and Ambassador Zekthara's image appeared on the screen. The Vex representative's crystalline features showed what might have been satisfaction. Admiral Hannah, I trust the delivery meets your expectations. The consortium appreciates Earth's willingness to handle our disposal needs. Our disposal needs, Hannah repeated after closing the channel. Not trade, not partnership, disposal. Tamin was studying the debris field with renewed interest. You know, sir, I've been thinking, all these different technologies, all these incompatible systems, what if incompatible just means no one's been creative enough to make them work together? As the last of the cargo ships prepared to depart, their holds finally empty, Hannah made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. The aliens had given humanity their refuse, expecting nothing more than grateful acceptance and efficient disposal. They were about to learn their first lesson about human ingenuity. Jinwoo, she said, her voice carrying a new note of determination, I want you to assemble a team. Our best engineers, our most creative minds, people who don't accept that something can't be done just because it's never been done before. The engineer looked puzzled. What kind of team, sir? Hannah smiled for the first time in months, watching as the alien cargo ships disappeared into the starfield. The kind of team that can turn 10,000 tons of incompatible junk into something the galaxy has never seen before. I have a feeling this garbage is about to become very valuable indeed. The coffee had gone cold hours ago, but engineer Park Jinwoo didn't notice. He stood transfixed before the massive holographic display that dominated the central chamber of asteroid base Omega-7, watching as streams of data flowed across the projection like digital waterfalls. 3 months had passed since Admiral Hannah had given him the impossible task of turning galactic garbage into something useful, and what his team had discovered was beyond anything he'd dared to hope for. The asteroid base itself had been humanity's best-kept secret for over a decade. Hollowed out from a wandering rock the size of Manhattan, it drifted in the outer reaches of the solar system where prying alien sensors couldn't detect it. The perfect place to conduct research that the Galactic Trade Consortium would definitely not approve of. Jinwoo, you need to see this, called Dr. Choi Minji from across the chamber. Her workstation was surrounded by floating holographic models of alien technology, each component rotating slowly as analysis programs tore them apart molecule by molecule. Jinwoo made his way through the maze of equipment and personnel that filled the base. Everywhere he looked, brilliant minds were at work on problems that had stumped entire alien civilizations. The air hummed with excitement and the subtle vibration of experimental machinery that pushed the boundaries of known physics. Show me what you found, Minji, Jinwoo said, settling into the chair beside her workstation. Around them, dozens of his best people continued their work, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of technologies that no species had ever successfully combined. Minji's fingers danced across her control interface with the precision of a concert pianist. The holographic display shifted and reformed, bringing up a three-dimensional model that made Jinwoo's breath catch in his throat. It was beautiful and alien at the same time, like looking at the blueprint for a crystalline flower that could power a city. It's remarkable, sir, Minji began, her voice carrying the enthusiasm of someone who'd just solved an impossible puzzle. Each alien species has developed incredible technologies, but they've all been thinking inside their own boxes for so long that they can't see the bigger picture. She highlighted a section of the model, and the crystalline structure pulsed with inner light. Look at this. The Vex abandoned these energy storage crystals because they couldn't maintain stable resonance frequencies above 40 terahertz. Their entire energy grid operates on rigid harmonic principles, so when these crystals started showing instability, they just threw them away. But, Jinwoo prompted, recognizing the tone in her voice that meant she'd found something extraordinary. But that instability isn't a flaw. It's a feature we can exploit. Minji's fingers flew over her controls, and the model transformed again. If we combine them with Krath bio-neural interfaces and use human fiber optic threading techniques, we can create a hybrid system that not only maintains stability, but actually amplifies energy output by 300%. The implications hit Jinwoo like a physical blow. You're saying their broken crystals can outperform their current technology? By a factor of 3, Minji confirmed. The bio-neural interfaces act like a living buffer system, adapting to the crystal's natural fluctuations instead of fighting them. And our fiber optic networks can channel that amplified energy with zero loss over vast distances. Lieutenant Colonel Park Daeho looked up from his own workstation across the room. The grizzled military advisor had been skeptical of the entire project from the beginning, but even he couldn't argue with results. You're saying we can make their garbage work better than their current technology? That's exactly what I'm saying, Minji replied, her excitement bubbling over. What's more, we've identified 17 different combination possibilities that should theoretically be impossible according to their individual engineering principles. Jinwoo felt a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth for the first time in weeks. Around the facility, similar breakthroughs were happening at every workstation. The sound of discovery filled the air. The sharp crack of successful energy discharges, the hum of new propulsion systems spinning up, the excited chatter of engineers who'd just proven that the impossible was merely improbable. Show me the propulsion work, Jinwoo said, standing and walking toward Sergeant Kim Hyun's station. The young engineer was surrounded by 3 different faster-than-light drive systems, each one representing a completely different approach to bending space-time. Sir, this is incredible, Hyun said, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. The Vex use crystalline resonance to create space-time bubbles. The Krath grow biomechanical tunnels through folded space. The Thorians just brute force their way through dimensions with massive energy expenditure. And separately, each system has major limitations, Jinwoo observed. The Vex drives are efficient but slow. Krath tunnels are fast but unpredictable. Thorian drives are powerful but consume enormous amounts of fuel. Exactly, Hyun's eyes lit up. But if we combine all 3 approaches? He activated a small demonstration model, and space around it seemed to ripple like water. We get the efficiency of Vex crystals, the speed of Krath biotunneling, and the raw power of Thorian engineering. The result is faster-than-light travel that's more efficient and more powerful than anything currently in use. Across the chamber, Captain Yoon Soo-ho was having his own eureka moment with defensive systems. The materials engineer had spent weeks analyzing discarded armor plating from a dozen different species, looking for patterns that others had missed. Each species optimizes their armor for different threats, Soo-ho explained as Jinwoo approached his station. Vex ceramics are great against energy weapons, but crack under kinetic impact. Krath bioarmor adapts to damage but has trouble with extreme temperatures. Thorian composites are incredibly strong, but too rigid to absorb distributed force. The demonstration that followed was like watching magic happen. Soo-ho had created a layered armor system that combined all 3 approaches, creating protection that was stronger than the sum of its parts. Energy weapons were absorbed by the Vex layer, kinetic impacts were distributed through the Thorian structure, and the Krath bioelements adapted to repair damage in real time. The aliens threw this stuff away because it didn't fit their design. Philosophy, Soo-ho said, running his hand along a sample plate that shimmered with an otherworldly beauty. But human engineering has always been about making incompatible things work together. We're good at finding creative solutions. Lieutenant Colonel Daeho joined them, his weathered face showing the first signs of genuine optimism Jinwoo had seen from him in months. How long until we have a working prototype? He asked. Jinwoo looked around the chamber, at his team of brilliant misfits and dreamers. They'd taken the galaxy's refuse and found treasures that their original creators had never imagined. Each workstation told a story of human ingenuity, triumphing over alien preconceptions. Give us 6 months, Minji replied from her station, not looking up from her work, and we'll show the galaxy what humans can do with their leftovers. But even as the teams returned to their work with renewed enthusiasm, none of them could have imagined the true scope of what they were creating. The individual components were impressive enough, energy systems that outperformed galactic standards, propulsion technology that redefined the possible, defensive systems that made existing armor obsolete. Combined into a single vessel, they would create something that would rewrite the rules of galactic warfare forever. The aliens had given humanity their junk, expecting nothing more than grateful disposal. Instead, they had unknowingly provided the components for the most revolutionary warship in galactic history. In the depths of asteroid base Omega-7, surrounded by the discarded dreams of a dozen civilizations, human creativity was about to show the galaxy what happened when you underestimated the species that had learned to thrive on making the impossible work. Admiral Kim Hana pressed her face against the transparent aluminum viewport of the zero-gravity observation chamber, her breath fogging the surface as she watched humanity's greatest achievement take its final form. The secret construction facility hung in the shadow of Jupiter's largest moon, hidden from alien sensors by the massive planet's electromagnetic interference. Here, in the darkness between worlds, something extraordinary had been born. The UES Defiance floated before her like a living nightmare made of metal and dreams. At first glance, it looked wrong. Too organic for a human ship, too mechanical for alien biotechnology, too beautiful for something built from garbage. Its hull seemed to shift and flow in the artificial lighting, sections of crystalline Vex technology pulsing with inner fire, while strips of Krath bioarmor rippled like muscle beneath synthetic skin. "My God!" whispered Dr. Park Minji, floating beside her with a tablet clutched in her trembling hands. 6 months ago, this was just scattered debris floating in Earth's orbit. Now look at it. The ship was massive, nearly a kilometer from bow to stern, but it moved with the grace of something alive. Tiny maintenance drones swarmed over its surface like metallic insects, making final adjustments to systems that had never existed before. Each section of the hull told a story of human ingenuity triumphing over alien limitations. "Final systems check complete, Admiral," came Chief Engineer Park Jin-woo's voice through the comm system. Though he sounded exhausted, the man hadn't slept more than 4 hours at a stretch in the past month. "All hybrid systems are operating within optimal parameters. I still can't believe it actually works." Hana activated her personal comm unit. "Walk me through it one more time, Jin-woo. I want to understand what we've built here." "Yes, sir." The engineer's voice carried a mixture of pride and disbelief. The hull incorporates 7 different alien technologies, woven together with human engineering in ways that their creators said were impossible. The primary structure uses thorium ceramic composites, the same stuff they use for their city-sized battleships, but we've bonded it with human carbon fiber matrices using techniques we developed for deep space mining equipment. Through the viewport, Hana could see the results. The hull looked like flowing water frozen in mid-splash, each panel seamlessly integrated with its neighbors, despite being made from completely different materials and manufacturing processes. "The power systems are where it gets really interesting," Jin-woo continued. "Those Vex crystal resonance chambers that they threw away? We've got 47 of them distributed throughout the ship, all networked together with Krath bio-neural interfaces. The crystals feed energy to each other in a cascade effect that amplifies output by factors the Vex never imagined possible." Hana could see the results of that innovation as well. Veins of crystalline light pulsed through the ship's superstructure like a gigantic heart beating in slow motion. Each pulse carried enough energy to power a small city, yet the system was so efficient that waste heat was almost non-existent. "Weapon systems?" she asked, though she already knew the answer would be impressive. "Beyond anything we've ever built," came Commander Lee Taman's voice from the ship's bridge. The veteran officer had been skeptical of the entire project until he'd seen the first test firing. "The main cannon combines energy projection with kinetic bombardment in ways that break every rule of space combat. We can fire pure energy, physical projectiles, or a hybrid beam that shifts between the two mid-flight." The main weapon was mounted along the ship's dorsal spine, a sleek barrel that looked deceptively simple until you realized it was actually 7 different weapon systems integrated into a single package. Vex energy-focusing crystals, Krath biomechanical targeting organs, thorium magnetic acceleration rings, and human computer-guided munitions, all working together to create something that had never existed in galactic warfare. The targeting system uses adaptive algorithms that can learn and counter enemy tactics in real time, Taman continued. We tested it against simulations of every known alien combat doctrine. It adapted to each one within minutes and developed countermeasures that turned their own strategies against them. Lieutenant Park Sun-ho's voice crackled over the comm from the engine room, where he'd been living for the past 2 weeks during final testing. Admiral, the propulsion system is unlike anything in the galactic database. We're combining Vex dimensional, folding, Krath biotunneling, and Thorian brute force acceleration into a single hybrid drive. Our test runs show speeds that will make their fastest ships look like they're standing still. Hana had seen those test runs. The Defiance could accelerate to faster than light speeds in seconds rather than hours, maintain those speeds longer than any known drive system, and emerge from hyperspace with pinpoint accuracy. More importantly, it could do all of this while remaining completely invisible to alien detection methods. The communication panel in the observation chamber suddenly blazed to life with an urgent transmission from Earth Command. Admiral Yun Dai-sung's weathered face appeared on the screen, his expression grim. Hana, we have a situation. Krath battle fleet detected moving toward the Proxima colonies. 12 ships, including 2 of their bio-dreadnoughts. They're transmitting demands for immediate surrender and payment of what they're calling outstanding debts for waste disposal services. Hana felt her stomach drop. The Krath were making their move, using the garbage disposal agreement as justification for claiming human colonies as payment. It was exactly the kind of legal manipulation that the major galactic powers excelled at, creating impossible situations. That justified whatever they wanted to do. How long until they reach Proxima? She asked. 18 hours at current speed, Daesung replied. The colonists are requesting immediate evacuation, but we don't have enough ships to move 40,000 people in time. The moment had arrived. All the months of secret construction, all the brilliant innovations and impossible engineering solutions, all the sleepless nights and desperate hopes, it all came down to this. Humanity's answer to galactic arrogance was about to face its first real test. All hands prepare for departure, Hana announced over the ship-wide comm system. Her voice carried to every section of the massive vessel, from the crystal-lined energy chambers to the biomechanical sensor arrays. It's time to show the galaxy what human ingenuity can accomplish. As she spoke, the Defiance began to come alive around her. The hybrid engines started their startup sequence, and space itself seemed to bend and warp around the ship's hull. Energy cascaded through the crystal matrix networks, bio-neural interfaces synchronized with human computer systems, and weapons that had never been fired in anger powered up for their first taste of real combat. The construction facility's massive bay doors began to open, revealing the star field beyond. The Defiance moved forward with fluid grace, its engines leaving a trail of distorted space-time that looked like liquid light. As it cleared the facility and began to accelerate toward its first battle, Admiral Hana allowed herself one last look at what they had accomplished. The aliens had given humanity their refuse, expecting nothing more than grateful submission. Instead, they had unknowingly provided the components for their own downfall. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you underestimated the species that had learned to turn impossible dreams into deadly reality. The Krath battle fleet emerged from hyperspace like a plague of mechanical locusts, their bioorganic hulls glistening with secreted metal compounds that made them look like living nightmares. Admiral Corex Prime stood in the nerve center of his flagship, the Devourer's Fang, watching as his 12 warships took formation around the human colony world of Proxima Prime. Each ship was a masterpiece of biomechanical engineering, grown rather than built in the vast breeding chambers of the Krath homeworld. Their hulls pulsed with malevolent life, veined with bio-neural conduits that carried both information and sustenance to the living weapon systems within. The smallest of his vessels was twice the size of humanity's largest battleship, and his 2 dreadnoughts were mobile cities of destruction that had reduced entire civilizations to cosmic dust. The humans are cowering on their little world, chittered his second-in-command, flexing razor-sharp appendages in anticipation. Their orbital defenses are laughably primitive. We could burn their cities from here. Corex Prime's compound eyes surveyed the tactical display with satisfaction. He had chosen 12 of his finest ships for this demonstration, each one a veteran of countless campaigns across the galaxy. This wasn't just about collecting payment for waste disposal services. This was about sending a message to every minor species that thought they could defy Krath authority. "Begin broadcasting surrender demands," he ordered, his mandibles clicking with amusement. "Let them know they have 1 hour to evacuate their colonies and prepare for harvesting. Their debt to the consortium must be paid, and if they cannot provide credits, they will provide labor." The Krath had perfected this technique over centuries: create impossible financial obligations, then use those debts to justify conquest and enslavement. It was completely legal under galactic trade law, and it had given them an empire spanning dozens of star systems. "Admiral," his tactical officer suddenly hissed, biomechanical sensors along his skull twitching in confusion. "Human vessel detected, bearing 27 Mark 5. Single ship, unknown configuration." Corex Prime's attention snapped to the display. There, accelerating toward his battle fleet with impossible speed, was a single human vessel. One ship? The humans had sent one ship against his entire battle fleet? The arrogance was almost insulting. "Magnify visual," he commanded. The main screen flickered, and the approaching ship filled the display. Corex Prime felt something cold settle in his thorax as he studied the vessel. It looked wrong, like something that shouldn't exist according to the natural order of the universe. The hull seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, and energy patterns, unlike anything in Krath databases, pulsed along its surface in hypnotic waves. "What is that thing?" whispered his weapons officer, biomechanical implants along her carapace, sparking with nervous energy. Before Corex Prime could answer, the communication system activated. A human female appeared on the screen, Admiral Kim Hana according to their intelligence files. She looked remarkably calm for someone facing impossible odds. "This is Admiral Kim Hana of the United Earth Forces," came the transmission, her voice carrying across space with crystal clarity. "You have 30 seconds to withdraw from human space." The bridge fell silent. Then Corex Prime's mandibles began to click in genuine amusement. The sound spread throughout the nerve center as his officers joined in, creating a chittering symphony. Of alien laughter. "Human," Corex Prime replied, leaning forward in his biomechanical command throne. "You face the might of 12 Krath warships. Each of my vessels could reduce your entire fleet to atoms. Surrender now, and your death will be swift. Resist, and we will harvest your people slowly, keeping them alive for months as our bioforges convert their flesh into useful materials." "Your 30 seconds are up," came Hana's calm reply. What happened next would be analyzed in military academies across the galaxy for generations, though few would ever truly understand how it was possible. The UES Defiance moved like nothing the Krath had ever encountered. It didn't maneuver with the rigid precision of their bioships, which relied on programmed instincts bred into their living hulls. It didn't calculate movements like Vex vessels, which followed mathematical perfection in all things. Instead, it moved with a fluid adaptability that seemed almost alive, as if the ship itself was thinking and reacting faster than any organic mind could process. "All ships open fire," Corex Prime screamed as the human vessel began its attack run. The Krath bioplasma cannons fired first, 12 ships unleashing streams of living energy that could dissolve molecular bonds and turn solid matter into its component atoms. These weapons had cracked the hulls of Thorian dreadnoughts and melted Vex crystal armor like ice in a furnace. Against a single human ship, they should have been overkill. But the Defiance's hybrid shielding didn't just absorb the attacks, it seemed to learn from them. The first volleys struck the ship's energy barriers and were deflected in brilliant cascades of light. The second volley had less effect. By the third, the bioplasma was being harmlessly dispersed as if the shields had developed immunity to the Krath weapons. "Impossible," hissed the weapons officer. "Our bioplasma is adapting, but their defenses are adapting faster." The human ship's return fire was like nothing in the galactic database. Energy beams that shifted properties mid-flight, starting as pure photon streams and transforming into particle bombardment that could punch through bioarmor like tissue paper, kinetic projectiles that curved around obstacles, their flight paths defying physics as human-computer guidance systems worked in harmony with alien propulsion technology. Most terrifying of all were weapons that seemed to anticipate craft evasive maneuvers before they were even executed. Ships that began turning to port found themselves bracketed by fire that had been aimed at where they would be, not where they were. It was as if the human vessel could see the future. "Their targeting system is learning our patterns," reported the tactical officer, panic creeping into his chittering voice. "It's analyzing our bioship responses and predicting our movements with 98% accuracy." Captain Lee Taman's voice crackled across space as he coordinated the battle from the Defiance's bridge. "Formation Alpha 7 is collapsing, moving to exploit the gap in their defensive screen." Corex Prime watched in growing horror as his proud battle fleet began to disintegrate. The Bone Crusher, a heavy cruiser that had served in 40 campaigns, erupted in a cascade of biomechanical debris as human weapons found every weak point in its living armor. The dreadnought Flesh Render tried to ram the human ship, only to watch in disbelief as the Defiance simply phased through a different layer of spacetime, emerging behind the massive vessel to deliver killing blows to its primary nerve clusters. "How are they doing this?" Corex Prime demanded. But his officers had no answers. Their biomechanical sensor arrays were reporting readings that made no sense, energy signatures that shifted between known spectrums, propulsion systems that seemed to operate on multiple principles simultaneously, weapons that defied classification. In less than 15 minutes, what had been a proud Krath battle fleet was reduced to floating wreckage and desperate escape pods. Ships that had conquered star systems were burning hulks drifting through space, their biomechanical components dying slowly as life support systems failed. Corex Prime's flagship shuddered as the Defiance's weapons found their mark. Bioneural. Conduits throughout the ship began shutting down as critical systems failed. Emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red shadows as his crew scrambled to abandon ship. "Transmit surrender," he gasped as his command throne began to dissolve. Beneath him, its biomechanical components reverting to organic sludge. "Tell them we yield." As rescue pods ejected from his dying ship, Corex Prime found himself floating in the cold vacuum of space, staring at the human vessel that had just destroyed everything he thought he knew about galactic warfare. The ship hung motionless among the debris, its alien hull still pulsing with that hypnotic energy pattern. "Impossible," he whispered into his emergency communicator as his pod's life support systems kicked in. How did they build such a weapon? Where did they get technology that advanced? As if in answer to his desperate question, Admiral Hana's final transmission reached him across the void. "We built it from your garbage." The conference chamber of New Geneva Station had never hosted a gathering quite like this one. Admiral Kim. Hana stood at the head of the massive oval table, watching as representatives from over 30 different species filed into their assigned seats. Some floated in specialized atmospheric containers, others required gravity adjustments, and a few existed as pure energy patterns projected through sophisticated holographic systems. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Proxima, and word of humanity's impossible victory had spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The Krath Empire, one of the most feared military powers in known space, had been utterly destroyed by a single human vessel built from discarded alien technology. The implications had sent shockwaves through every capital world, embassy, and trading post from the galactic core to the outer rim. Ambassador Veltar of the Vex hegemony shifted nervously in his crystalline form, the geometric patterns on his body flickering with what humans had learned to recognize as anxiety. The Vex prided themselves on logical perfection, but the human victory had shattered several of their most fundamental assumptions about technological development. "Admiral Hana," Veltar began, his voice carrying the harmonic frequencies that allowed his silicon-based species to communicate, "the Vex hegemony wishes to renegotiate our previous arrangements with humanity. We believe there may have been certain misunderstandings in our initial trade agreements." Hana allowed herself a small smile. "I'm sure you do," she replied, her voice carrying the quiet confidence of someone who held all the cards. Behind her, through the massive, transparent aluminum viewport that dominated one wall of the conference chamber, the sight that had changed everything was clearly visible. 47 warships hung in formation around New Geneva Station, each one a masterpiece of hybrid engineering that combined technologies from multiple species in ways that their original creators had declared impossible. The fleet looked like something from a fever dream, hulls that shifted between crystalline and organic textures, energy patterns that pulsed with the rhythms of living hearts, weapons systems that seemed to watch the universe with predatory intelligence. "Before we discuss renegotiations," Hannah continued, "I think it's important that everyone understands exactly what humanity has accomplished with your generous donations." Engineer Park Jinwoo stepped forward and activated the chamber's central holographic display. The air above the conference table filled with technical specifications that made several alien representatives gasp in shock or chittle in disbelief. 47 vessels completed, 18 more under construction, Jinwoo announced, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was describing. Each ship incorporates technologies from multiple species, combined in ways that were previously thought impossible. The results exceed the performance of any known vessel class by significant margins. The holographic display showed cutaway views of the hybrid ships, revealing the intricate web of alien technologies that had been woven together with human engineering. Vex crystal matrices provided power in quantities that dwarfed their original specifications. Krath bio-neural networks offered adaptive capabilities that surpassed even the most sophisticated artificial intelligence systems. Thorian structural materials created hulls that were simultaneously stronger than diamond and more flexible than living tissue. The Thorian delegate, a massive creature of living stone whose species had ruled through brute force for millennia, rumbled his words carefully. His voice sounded like mountains grinding together, and each syllable carried the weight of geological ages. "You have exceeded our expectations, humans," he admitted, crystalline eyes focusing on the display with something that might have been respect. "Perhaps we underestimated your potential for creative synthesis." Commander Lee Taemin stepped forward, his expression hard as granite. The veteran officer had been present during humanity's darkest hours, when it seemed like they would forever remain the galaxy's unwanted custodians. "You gave us your refuse because you thought we were nothing more than galactic janitors," he said, his words carrying decades of accumulated resentment. "What you didn't realize is that one species' garbage can become another's greatest weapon. You looked at incompatible technologies and saw waste. We looked at the same components and saw unlimited possibilities." Dr. Choi Minji activated another section of the holographic display, bringing up real-time performance data from the hybrid fleet. The numbers were staggering, and several alien representatives began urgent consultations with their advisors. Current fleet capabilities include adaptive shielding that learns from enemy weapons and develops countermeasures in real time, Minji explained. "Our propulsion systems achieve speeds 400% faster than previous galactic records while consuming less energy than conventional drives. Most significantly, our weapons platforms can reconfigure themselves based on tactical requirements, adapting to any combat situation within minutes." The implications were clear to everyone in the room. Humanity had not just built a better mousetrap, they had fundamentally redefined what was possible in spacecraft design and construction. Every established military doctrine, every carefully balanced treaty, every assumption about galactic power structures had become obsolete overnight, but it was Captain Park Daeho who delivered the message that would reshape galactic politics forever. The military strategist had spent months analyzing the political ramifications of humanity's technological breakthrough, and his words carried the weight of inevitability. "Any species that wishes our protection need only offer their worthless technologies in trade," he announced, his voice echoing in the suddenly silent chamber. "We've discovered that what the great powers consider obsolete, we can make revolutionary. What they call incompatible, we call complementary. What they throw away as garbage, we transform into weapons that can challenge their dominance." The effect was immediate and dramatic. A dozen hands, claws, tentacles, and energy appendages shot, up around the room as representatives clamored for attention. The Kelvani delegation wanted protection from Vex expansion into their mining territories. The Meraki sought defense against Krath bioweapon development programs. Even some Thorian mining guilds expressed interest in breaking free from hegemony, control and establishing independent trade relationships with humanity. In one corner of the chamber, a holographic projection flickered to life. Admiral Corex Prime appeared in the display, attending the conference virtually from his prison cell on a maximum security facility orbiting Proxima Prime. The former Krath commander looked haggard, his biomechanical implants dark and lifeless, but his compound eyes still held a spark of the intelligence that had once made him one of the galaxy's most feared military leaders. "Humans," he said, his mandibles clicking in what those familiar with Krath psychology recognized as genuine respect. "We gave you junk. Refuse that we considered worthless. Technologies we had abandoned as failures or incompatible with our design philosophy. And you took our garbage and made us obsolete." The admission sent ripples of shock through the assembled delegates. For a Krath commander to publicly acknowledge defeat was unprecedented. But Corex Prime's words carried the weight of undeniable truth. Admiral Hana nodded to Engineer Jinwoo, who activated the final section of the holographic display. The air above the conference table filled with construction plans and technical specifications that represented the next phase of human development. Vessels that would make the current hybrid fleet look primitive by comparison. "The galaxy is about to learn what happens when you underestimate human ingenuity," Hana announced, her words carrying to every corner of the chamber and through quantum communication links to capital worlds across known space. "We'll take your refuse, your obsolete technology, your industrial waste, your failed experiments, and we'll turn it all into something that will protect every species tired of living under the thumb of the so-called great powers." As the conference concluded and new alliances were forged in the wake of humanity's demonstration, the UES Defiance hung silently in space beyond the viewport. Its hybrid systems hummed with contained power, bioneural networks pulsed with alien thoughts, and weapon systems that defied classification waited patiently for their next opportunity to reshape the balance of galactic power. Born from garbage and raised on impossibility, it had become the symbol of a new galactic order, one where creativity mattered more than tradition, where adaptability trumped rigid doctrine, and where human ingenuity had turned the galaxy's trash into its most feared weapons. The aliens had given humanity junk, expecting nothing more than grateful submission and efficient disposal. Instead, they had unknowingly provided the tools and components that would allow humans to reshape the stars themselves, proving once and for all that one species' waste could become another's path to dominance. The end.